Hello there, traders. Give me a second. Just getting the light switched on. Internet is playing up today, so hopefully it doesn't cut out too much. The past couple of days has been a bit ropey, so I will hopefully it continues to be, well, it doesn't continue to be ropey. Hopefully it sorts itself out whilst on the live stream. But if it does cut out, then I can only apologize. I'll make sure to go over some key points pretty quickly. Afternoon, Royston. Hope you're doing well, mate. I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, we discussed a dollar CAD opportunity yesterday. If you haven't had a chance to see the video yet, we were discussing whether to trade or fade dollar CAD, and I like the idea of being a buyer of dollar CAD. I just needed to wait for some technical setups to come, and we're starting to see that sort of play out a little bit now. So hopefully we get an opportunity. I'm just waiting for the conditions or the strategy setup now on a swing trading option. So we'll go over that in a second. CG, good afternoon. Good day to you, sir. Hope you're doing well. Hi, Vincent. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Right. So yeah, and also I'm going to go through, I'm doing a little bit of research at the moment, doing some election year analysis at the moment, which I'm creating a video on. So I might touch upon that a little bit because obviously we're in an election year. I want to start talking about the potential risk of the election. You know, there are, you know, the risk of the Fed not cutting before the election is definitely something we can obviously discuss as well. But we're going to go through some charts today. I'm going to keep it really simple. Like I said, my internet's playing up a little bit, so I'll go through the main sort of talking points, and then if it continues to be okay, then we can carry on a little bit. So yeah, let me know if it cuts out a little bit. Like I said, I can only apologize. So let's go over dollar CAD then. So really interesting market. Let's talk about it from a technical analysis point of view. We're in this overall trading range on dollar CAD, and we've been in this trading range for a really long time now. Basically bouncing between sort of the 139 handle and sort of 132. Okay, and the market has been really nicely working its way through these levels. And recently we breached the 136 handle, and the 136 handle was kind of a sticking point for price recently. If I go down to the daily chart, you can see that the 136 was really was a sticking point for price. And, you know, now we've kind of breached through that. This is where, you know, it kind of caught our attention to see if there was any kind of further upside. We had that upside. Price was then since pulling back. So basically what I'm looking for now is, are we going to transition again into that sort of bullish phase? And are we going to try and retest previous swing highs around about 138.30? Or are we going to go and retest 139? That's what I'm looking for here at the moment. So we've also had some GDP data out of Canada, came in a little bit lower than expected, 0.2% over 0.3%. That's compounding this little bit of CAD weakness that we're seeing in the market at the moment. And the Bank of Canada, you know, they could go on rates if we saw a little bit further declines in inflation. So might see a little bit of CAD weakness enter the market here, a little bit of dollar strength. You know, I do like the idea of a bullish dollar. I think we talked about this previously, but we are technically still bullish here. It is choppy though. It's not a pretty picture at the moment. We've got this kind of 4-hour range that's developed, and it's kind of extended its range now, sort of through the sort of 105.50s up to the 106.10. So really speaking, if we want to be very clear on what we're doing with the US dollar, you know, I want to be long. So I'm looking for longs at lows really, and I'm looking to see if price breaches highs. You know, that's the best case scenario for us here, is, if we get a breach of these swing highs, then it gives us an opportunity to look for dollar strength again. Because at the moment, we are just kind of working within this sort of channel that's being developed. So I still like dollar longs. Whether that plays out or not, we'll have to wait and see. I can see that we're kind of testing back up into this kind of range that developed on Friday. That could be a point where sellers come in again and drive prices back to 105.50. But I think if we hold 105.50, I'll be more favorable to the upside. If we breach below it, then we have to reconsider what's going on at that point. But flipping back to US dollar CAD, the conditions that I typically want to see met. So if we look at sort of trend analysis, if I'm looking at the sort of primary phase in the market, which is the sort of longer phase, and then I look at the secondary phase, I'm looking for the sort of 4-hour trend within that to start to change. Okay. And then I just look for a continuation of those conditions on lower time frames. Okay. So that's what I'm kind of looking for here now. Flip back up to the weekly. What is the weekly doing? Well, we're in the secondary phase. Okay. It's not confirmed until we get that sort of lower time frame change of trend, or at least a strong bullish weekly close, but we're only on Tuesday. So, we'll have to see where we're at by the end of the week in terms of price action, considering the fact we've got Fed funds rate decision this week, as well as the NFP reports. So it's going to be a tricky trading week, but maybe a bit of volatility around, a bit of volume in the market. And here, nice little sort of double bottom developed down here on Friday and Monday's price action. We've now breached that to the upside. What I'd be looking for really, in theory, is for price to come back down now. Can it come back and retest sort of the 137 handle? Can we apply some potential strategies to this? And one strategy I was talking about in the video yesterday was watching the 50 and the 200 moving average and looking for when that and the stochastic kind of lined up with an opportunity. So really speaking, what I want to be looking for now is for a pullback into previous structure. Nice round number of 137. Can we then see a nice little sort of repeat of that move with a potential trade higher? So yeah, really like where dollar CAD's positioned at the moment. We've got that obviously confirmed close above those previous highs now. Unless anything kind of drastic happens here, then we should get the second confirmed close above these highs as well. And yeah, all I'll be watching for then is what happens when price does the same thing. What happens when the 4-hour time frame starts pulling back? Well, we will see a lower time frame develop on 15-minute time frame, and then I'll be looking for that change for opportunities to get in the market as well. Royster makes a good point. Yeah, we're coming into the end of month flows as well. We'll get a new monthly candle going into tomorrow's trading. I mean, it just shows us, look, we're just pretty much in that range bound environment here on dollar CAD. Even the monthly's in a sort of long scale range as well. So let's see what happens. I mean, if you get a strong sort of opinion from the Fed on where they see rates, I think the markets now is kind of putting in risk of another hike. Inflation has remained sticky in the US. Labor market has been resilient. The talk as well is, can the market remain at higher sort of inflation levels, higher sort of Fed funds rates, higher interest rates, and still grow? That's what the interest is around as well. And if that growth continues, will that then see pressures on inflation again? And that's not necessarily what will happen, obviously, because if the Fed leaves rates higher, and that's meant to put sort of pressure on borrowing costs and things like that for businesses. So we might still be working out the effects of that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that does develop this week. Especially, I'll be watching what Federal Reserve Chairman Powell says, and I'll definitely be looking at that NFP data. I found a really interesting chart actually that I will bring up. Let me just see if I can get it on the screen. And I was going to post about this at some point this week. Let me just see if I can find it. It was a seasonal chart of the NFP data. Here we go, NFP seasonals. Let me bring this onto the screen. So this is what I find super interesting in the markets. And I think, a lot of people may find this research sort of boring, I guess. But I don't. I think it's really interesting because what we've got is 2023 in the green. Okay, so that's what happened in 2023. The blue line is the average of the previous 20 years. Okay, and 2024 is the red line. Look how we are still kind of tracking the seasonal, the average performance of non-farm payrolls. That is what is quite interesting to me, is the fact that we are sort of tracking the total non-farm payrolls or the US employment. We are potentially going to see further growth. When we do get a correlation as strong as this, then there's potential for further growth. Now, obviously, it may jump above this. That's what will be interesting as well. If we see 2024 going above the averages of the previous years, that's going to show strong growth in the US. And how is that going to impact what the Fed do next? Because the Fed are talking about that for them to cut rates, they need to see unemployment rise. They need to see basically the labor market not be as resilient as it is. And I don't think that's coming. So a cut for me is off the table right now, completely. Some are saying that they've got to cut just to cut, because no Federal Reserve really has cut during sort of over that sort of close to the election. So it's almost like, can they cut before the election starts? But yeah, so just super interesting. I thought I'd just show you that. So what does that tell us? That maybe the NFP this week is going to be a strong NFP number again. And the dollar index is so close to this 107 handle that I do quite like the idea of that. But anyway, let's move on. So dollar CAD, still like being a buyer, looking for opportunities on that one now. Let's take a look at euro dollar. I like shorts euro dollar. Obviously, again, if we look at this weekly time frame, which is where I kind of do a lot of my analysis, we can see that we are sort of in a secondary phase now. Okay, now in a secondary phase, we get a pullback, we get a sort of upward trend development on the 4-hour time frame. So if we go to the 4-hour time frame, you can see that this upward trend has been developing here. Okay, let me just take off the averages here. Second, look, you can see the market is higher highs and higher lows. So in my analysis this week, I basically, talked about the fact that the market is consolidating here at an area of resistance. Now, because I said I like dollar longs, I do quite like euro dollar shorts, especially as it comes back into these kind of swing high areas. But that is an early interpretation of potential changes. For me, if I'm going to see the potential weekly trend resume, then I would want to see new lows being made on price, and especially on the H4 time frame. So for me, breaks below 1.0675 would be a good indication that the weekly trend is going to resume, and then we could look for further downside into the 1.06 handle, perhaps into the 1.05 handle. What we may see this week is a breach of this area, okay? Especially with high volatility news events. We may see prices try and breach this particular high, for instance, lots of low volume up here. Okay, price likes to kind of go back to low volume points, but we could see price spike into that on a high impact news event break and then a continuation to the downside. This is what I'm kind of trying to anticipate for this week. How does the market frame itself? Do we get a breach of a high here? You know, does price try and seek new highs, maybe trap a few buyers on this side, bring price back below key level of resistance, and then look for a move? Okay, so that's what I'm kind of eyeing up at the moment. I'm eyeing up the idea of price kind of maybe breaching the high, coming back underneath, continuing to the downside there. If we go look at it from an hourly perspective, look how price is reacting. You know, lows come into play here, the market's bouncing. We come up into swing highs up here, the market's bouncing. So it's telling us that, you know, the market doesn't know what it wants to do yet. There's no defined sort of strategy here. All I can say is that where's the cleanest price action? And for me, it's up at this weekly chart. You know, the weekly's telling us everything we really need to know. The market is making new lows on the weekly. We had a very aggressive week, which was the Monday, the 8th of April week. And we can see since then, we've just had a very slow decline. And I talk about this quite often. Look at the range of the candlesticks. Okay. The low range in candlestick movement here. Obviously, we're only on Tuesday, so we have to take this with a little bit of pinch of salt right now, because no data's really dropped yet in the US. But that sort of slow pullback there would be, for me, a big sign that maybe price is going to continue to the downside. It's just how that shapes itself. How does that formulate for us in order to create high probability opportunity in the market? And like I said, for me, I like to then monitor the 4-hour trend. If the 4-hour trend can change here, break but make new lows, I'll be looking at where that lower high could come in. Where could we find an opportunity at that point? Okay. Vincent, pound Oz and pound CAD. Yeah, let's go take a look at those then. You know, I did quite like the idea of being Aussie short this week. If we look at the weekly chart, we had a very strong move last week. But again, we just kind of tried to pop above this kind of candlestick area here. I was watching it last week for a short, and look at the 4-hour. Okay, so no reason to be short last week. The market was making higher highs and higher lows. Okay, we did try and come up into this area, which is my area of resistance. I was just kind of eyeing up this zone in here because I knew that low volume was above this point, and we've now started to create a break in trend. So maybe Aussie's going to be one of the first ones to go. You know, I need to kind of reshape this market right now because we've got sort of new highs up towards the sort of 65.75 handle. You know, where were those significant lows? We had a sort of break of this low at 65.17. You know, is this technically a low in here potentially at 65.45? And now we're trying to come down in towards these swing lows here. So I like the idea of being more short Aussie US dollar at the moment. You know, maybe if we can see, we can kind of look for where that lower high might come into play. So maybe 65.16. So just keep an eye on your 4-hour chart now. For me, I want to see a pullback, because if we start to make these kind of movements into this level here, okay, then do we get a bearish close? Then that's the potential for the lower time frame to give us an opportunity to the downside. So that's what I'm going to be keeping my eye on. So nothing just yet. Nothing just yet there for me. But I like that. But let's go flick over to pound Aussie then. Let's go over to pound Oz. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. Again, just kind of have a little look at where this market's sort of shaping up. It still hasn't really done a fat lot, has it? This was the resistance we were on about a while ago. Still failed to trade through that resistance. I mean, look at that pullback. You know, it's not really, you know, where would you get short or long here? We obviously had a significant low down in there, which was found on the daily chart. I think for me, the only thing I would say now is we've obviously come into these lows, we've rejected it. Price is rallying. We've got kind of resistance towards 1.93 or even resistance towards 194. So the only thing I would suggest here maybe is if today closes as it is, looking at the structure and where price could head to. So yeah, that 193 handle is kind of this double top neckline area. And then you've got kind of quite aggressive selling coming in on the 19th of April, which could be a good area for price to go and test again. So look, we've breached previous highs. The market tried to break lower. It failed to do so. Trapped a few sellers here. Buyers got involved. You can see exactly the moment where sellers gave up essentially, and it was right here. Okay, when you see as soon as the market breached that candlestick there, lots of volume coming in. So that's probably these sellers that got short on the break here. Stops maybe above this little swing high. Stops maybe trying to be above this candlestick high as well. I just got absolutely destroyed there. So what I'll be looking for, again, a good thing to look for here, Vincent, is wait for your candles to start pulling back, because that gives you the idea that you're in the secondary phase again. And once we're in that secondary phase, all we're doing is trying to look for that turning point again. So it may happen, down towards the lows here. It may happen at another level of support and resistance. But yeah, just keep an eye on your 4-hour chart for now, because then that'll give you the kind of opportunity there. I mean, looking at the 30-minute time frame, you've got this sort of zone in here, haven't you, around 192. So that could be a good point for price to kind of stick at. Pound CAD. So yeah, I like a little bit of CAD weakness. Let's remove these and let's jump back up to the weekly chart. I mean, that to me is a good. I would say this is fairly bullish. You've got the market making higher lows, and you've got a base here. So I imagine if price breached this zone to the upside, it could be very bullish for price. So have a little look. Those are the two areas that kind of stand out to me right now. You've got 178 and 182.60s, 182.50s. So yeah, I like longs here as well. Just go down a couple of time frames. Love when you see stuff like that. When you have another candle that kind of just completely removes the other candle in the market. If I went to a 2-day chart, it'd be a nice pink candle, right? So it just completely overrules that previous day's work, and then the market kind of makes its move to the upside at that point. So yeah. Let's go over to gold, because I like gold downside now. Let's go up to that weekly chart. What phase are we in? We're in that secondary phase on gold, and it's just trying to judge where gold prices could end up again. And I like to just kind of put myself in the shoes of a gold investor. Where would I want to be a buyer of gold again? And I don't mind the idea of being a buyer back down towards this kind of 2200 area. I don't mind being an investor in gold back down towards this zone, down towards the sort of $2,075 and below kind of zones. And again, if we kind of look at the price action here, we're in that secondary phase now. And if we go take a look at the 4-hour time frame, we are very much bearish here. I actually sold gold today on a 15-minute time frame, which I'll break down in a second. But if I just put a 50 moving average on here as well, I always talk about the 50 moving average, but look when price started to go into that weekly bullish phase, look how it hugged that 50 and it never really got below it, not significantly anyway, until here. We're now significantly below it. Again, it's come up, it's hugged that 50. We're starting to push away again. So if we continue to break into new lows, maybe pull back, maybe the 50 could come back into it. It could be a good area for price to sort of stick towards that a little bit, maybe down into this $2,200 area. So I think as long as price stays below the 50 MA, stays below these previous swing highs at 23.50, I quite like gold downside. I don't know if anybody else agrees with that. Let me know what you think. Would you fade gold right now? Let me know. Fade this bullish move. But it'd be interesting to see if that can continue to the downside. Now, if I go to the 15-minute time frame today, price was very bearish. We crossed over on the averages here, but you can see we're just absolutely taking out all these previous lows. And what I was watching was, again, trend. Okay, so this is something that you can potentially look into. The market is making higher highs and higher lows. This is an area where we start to get the secondary phase in the market. If I go to a 30-minute time frame, you'll see it a little bit more clearly because we can see prices pretty much straight line throughout the day. This is where we start to get the pullback. We can tell that because the candle makes higher highs and higher lows. Okay, higher high, higher low. We get an engulfing candle there. Then we get an inside candle. Okay. So as soon as that inside candle turned up, I was a little bit like, oh, is this the moment, right? If I go to a 15-minute time frame, what does that look like? Well, it looked like a lower high, lower low candlestick on the 15-minute time frame. So as soon as that kind of formed, I was like, okay, I quite like the idea of being a gold seller now. Where do I like being a seller too? And because it was an intraday trade, I was kind of eyeing up this zone in here where the price kind of found a recent low. So if I go down into a 3-minute time frame now, all I look for is once that 15-minute had completed, so let me just jump back up and just show you that time there was 11:30. Okay, so the 11:30 candle closed. Okay, which would be there. Okay, so it'd actually be 11:45 that candle closed. Okay, which is that candlestick there. What do you notice about price? Well, what I notice is that the market was making higher highs. Okay, it was making higher lows, and now that potential condition has changed. The market came in, rallied, moved. I actually got short on this candle close, the close below the previous candle. Okay, I put my stop loss in at this key swing high here, and I literally just targeted a 1-to-1 because this to me is like a little scalping move. So literally just targeted 1-to-1 there. Obviously, looking in hindsight, that could have been a 3.36 move to the downside, because what do you also notice about price here? This is what I try and show you all the time, is in that sort of downward impulse phase on a 15-minute time frame, look at the 3-minute chart. It doesn't really make any higher highs, does it? At all throughout that period. So just showing you here, it kind of, this is why I love multi-time frame analysis, because it works on every level. You can obviously get a little bit confused by some time frames can be pulling back still while you're in a position. But that is I'd say that's a perfect example. If I look at my 15-minute chart here, you've just got consistent lower high, lower low. This one's a little bit of a funky one. But then you've got lower low, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. If that starts to change, so you can see this candlestick at the minute, we're at 2:30 now, so we're coming into that US Open. If that starts to change here and we get a strong bullish close here, well, then the market is potentially moving back into the secondary phase. So you can argue that we could pull all the way back up into resistance here. If we get a lower high, lower low candlestick, and then on the 3-minute time frame, can that give us another opportunity to trade back lower? You know, so hopefully that makes sense anyway. But I quite like the idea of gold continuing to the downside, especially when we look at it on a bigger picture. I would be concerned that we're coming into 4-hour lows. You know me. I like to be a buyer from lows, and a seller from highs. So whether I would get into another trade here is a different sort of question. I think I'd have to go in at a lower risk, but I could potentially see price breaching these lows and continuing down. I know there's been some peace talks in the Middle East as well, so or at least some kind of ceasefire talks as well. And is that going to see a little bit of an outflow out from gold at the minute? Let's have a quick look over at our commitment of trader reports. Any questions, by the way, guys? Sorry, I'm just kind of ranting on here. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if there's something that you want me to discuss on the stream. If there's any kind of charts of interest you really want me to take a look at, please let me know. Happy to go and look at those. If you want me to explain commitment to trader reports, let me know as well. But what we're kind of looking at here, or what I was looking at here on gold, is the bull rally over? That's what I want to try and find out. And I don't think it is. So don't get me wrong. When I'm talking about being a seller of gold, I don't think I want to be a seller of gold long term. I want to be a buyer of gold long term. It's just that we know markets don't move in straight lines. We know that they pull back and they go again, and things like that. So the reason why I kind of want to be a gold buyer essentially is because we're not at the extremes yet. We're not at the extremes. You can see here, I want to be at least I want to see the non-coms buying aggressively. I want to see I want to see commercials selling aggressively as well, because they're the ones that are in the business of gold. So if it's overvalued, it may even hit sort of like the $2,600 mark at some point. But for me right now, I'd want to see moves lower. Now, if we look at kind of the last 3 weeks of price, right? So last 3 weeks, we've kind of seen a top and a bit of a pullback. Look at the comms. It's actually gone up a little bit. So you can see we've actually gone from minus 234,000 contracts, something like that. And we're now seeing at minus 223,000 contracts. So commercials are still buying gold, okay? Which is really, really interesting. Really interesting. Almost flatlining a little bit. So that tells me that I don't think the buying's necessarily done. It's just that I think as price comes down again, the buying will get more aggressive again. And we'll probably see a move higher again. Great analysis of gold, John. Thank you, Royston. What's your views on Swiss yen? Yeah, let's go back to Swiss yen. You're liking Swiss yen, Royston. Talked about this a couple of times, haven't we? I mean, yen is a wild beast at the moment, right? I haven't really touched yen for a while, and I'm quite gutted about that, because dollar yen, I've been talking about 160 being the intervention point, or at least a potential area of intervention. And it literally came into, I think the high of the candle was 160.20. And, the market gave us a clue that could be the point, because those were the highs that formed back in 1990. Now, it hasn't been confirmed, really, that it was a intervention. I think we're going to get that confirmation in May, whether the BOJ intervened. But I'd be very interested to see if it happens again. Okay, so what we tend to see is a bit of an intervention spark, right? And what typically happens, if I just go back and have a little look at what's happened in the past, bit of an intervention move, price rallied again, bit of an intervention move, and we got a big sort of move to the downside there. Okay, is that going to be the same here now? are we going to see another move back to 160, which I think is highly probable, to be honest, and move back to 160? A move back to 160, are we going to see intervention again here, or is price just going to try and flirt with sort of 162s before seeing another, aggressive move to the downside? So, looking at this point of view, I could have easily had sort of a 500 pip winner here, looking at intervention down to sort of 155 handle. Even if I had like 100 pip stop there, would have been a nice sort of intervention move. Maybe we'll see something very similar again. And maybe we'll see a bit more of an aggressive intervention, because the difference between this area and the previous level is the fact that we're at a very, very interesting point, especially if you look at the monthly. Like I said, 160, a break above 164 would be very, very, very interesting. And it's quite interesting. I say interesting a lot because it is interesting. I promise you. So you've got the BOJ that are just they handle the situation with interest rates. They're not necessarily looking at it from a political point of view, how it is affecting consumers in Japan, because it is affecting consumers in Japan. However, you've got sort of the policymakers in Japan, and they're really concerned with the yen at the moment. And will that force the BOJ's hand slightly? So, yes, it is an interesting concept to what happens next. But I think these are some big, big levels coming up. And I'd like to see how it reacts again to 160. I think if we get quite a serious turnover here at 160 again, then I would say that's definitely a serious kind of intervention there. But let me go back to Swiss yen, Royston. Sorry. What's your view on Swiss yen short? It's been a slow mover so far. I like the idea of Swiss yen moving short. I think right now it's a very hard trade to kind of jump in on. Like I said there, I think dollar yen could go back to 160, which means we'd probably see Swiss yen back up towards the sort of 175 handle. We know that the Swiss National Bank wants a cheapy Swiss franc, so that kind of goes with the idea of a Swiss yen short. But yeah, I can see this kind of trying again, maybe the top of the range here, maybe that 175 handle before seeing a continuation lower there. But this is any yen pair being traded at the moment is very difficult, because the risk is to the downside, right? Everyone's so heavy long dollar yen or Swiss yen or, pound yen, Aussie yen, for instance. Those markets are so heavily weighted to the upside at the moment, then the risk is to the downside, and it could go lower in a big way, a very, very big way. But when is it going to come in? It's going to be manipulated somehow. So we'll have to wait to see how that comes. It's really hard to kind of discuss that one, Royston, because I would go usually into the technicals of it and try and pick out levels and say, this is what I feel if price kind of broke this level, or if price breaks that level. But in situations like this, I think it's really hard to pick out a level. If anything, for me, I would be much easier kind of looking at dollar yen and where that intervention could kind of come in. We could obviously look at dollar Swiss as well. This is typical. Ironically, I was long dollar Swiss last week, and I got stopped out on it at the start of this week. And look at it, it's completely turned to the upside. So I had my stop loss just below these hourly lows here, and look what happened. It kind of took my stop, this little level in here, and I did wonder to myself, should I get back in this? Because I still feel like dollar Swiss long is a good play. And yeah, been a bit tricky these past couple of weeks. As someone that wants to be dollar long, it's quite tricky because the market is obviously consolidating. And I've tried to get dollar long a couple of occasions, and it's not quite it's not quite worked out for me. Maybe I needed to use some wider stops this week or last week to try and kind of avoid that volatility shakeout, but hasn't happened for me so far. But hopefully, as soon as it kicks off again, I can get back into it. Yeah, fundamentals will drive price. Yeah, I think I agree with that as well, Royston. I think that's what we're kind of shaping up to see at the moment. But there are some good currencies out there. Aussie. I mean, let's have a quick look at Aussie yen, because I did like the idea of Aussie yen longs throughout sort of last week, and I was kind of tracking this after it kind of broke to the upside, you know. But I didn't quite fancy jumping in, and the reason was because look at this 15-minute shakeout here, you know. That price action kind of scares me a little, especially when you're putting risk on the line, when you're putting money on the line. You know, it scared me a little. Let's go have a quick flick over to our stock market. So the volatility index has kind of trended down a little bit. I can see that it's back up a little bit today, but we came up into the high 20s and we've just been falling off a little bit. Not really seeing that reflected too much in the stock market. If we go take a look at the S&P 500, for instance, we are starting to see a move back up, but it's been very laboured, I would say, the stock market sort of move. Now, obviously, we are in the sort of earning season period. I think we've got Apple reporting this week, I believe. So, you know, some other kind of big tech companies as well reporting. So maybe the market's just kind of seeing what's going on there, but I think there is a risk here. And while we're not seeing sort of too much rallying of the stock markets at the moment, I think there is a risk that the Fed may talk about, let's just say they say something like, hikes are not off the table. Okay, if we have to, we will hike again. I think that'll put a bit of pressure on the stock markets. I think we'll probably see moves a little bit lower. We'll see a bit of dollar strength off the back of that, and maybe a move down towards the sort of 36.50s on the Dow, for instance. What I'm really watching is these highs. You know, I was long down in this area. I got out towards these highs. I'm now just waiting because I wanted to see price breach the highs here. I think if we breach these swing highs, then I'd have been looking for prices to move back towards the all-time highs. But yeah, that hasn't occurred either. You know, if we look at bond yields, heading higher again, heading back towards the 5%. Usually when the US 10-year rallies, the dollar can follow that. So there is usually a good correlation there. So is that kind of giving us a bit of a signal of what's to come? You know, I can see oil prices are down a little bit as well. So again, this is what I'm kind of looking at the dollar CAD trade. You know, because those tensions in the Middle East are kind of slowing slightly. Oil prices have started to decline. That's why I quite like the dollar CAD play as well. I'd say dollar CAD's my kind of a top pick at the minute. If I was going to make one. Kiwi's down a fair bit today as well. Let's have a little look at the 4-hour time frame here. See, look, we're starting to just little signs here that we are starting to break trends a little bit, which is good. You know, this to me is a good sign that we could see some further downside. I've got a little alert down at 5,900. I'm sure that was from a previous week. But look at that 4-hour pullback. Now we're starting to break all these lows. This could be a good sign that we're going to see a bit more downside now. You know, is that dollar strength coming back essentially? I'll have to have a little wait and see on that one. But yeah, so we've been running about 45 minutes, guys. I'll probably call it there. Let me know if there's any last minute questions that you want me to kind of have a little look at. One market I pointed out a while ago was the HK50. I felt that this was a very cheap market, and we've actually started to kind of breach to the upside a little bit here. And look at that on a weekly. Breach this trend line resistance. You know, if it can maintain above that, we could see a significant move in this stock market. Quite like the FTSE as well. FTSE play is quite good. quite interesting. I was actually talking to a good friend of mine. He's in the recruitment business. He's saying that they are absolutely rammed at the moment with jobs. And he's in a finance service industry, which, the UK has quite a strong financial service industry. And, I think the FTSE could be one to watch as a good mover to the upside. Other stock markets have kind of had their runs, and the FTSE didn't really kind of keep up with that. I like the idea of being long FTSE. I took a couple of longs within this area, banked them at the highs. But ever since this kind of turning point here, I quite like that. So I'm keeping an eye on the daily price action. I don't necessarily want to buy here. Maybe if we can get a little bit of a decline, I'll be looking for a bit of upside as well, but quite like the FTSE. So yeah, that's kind of my top picks at the moment. FTSE I quite like. 𝖢𝖥𝖣, really like that market. We'll see if the data can kind of come on this week. Like I said, I'm doing a little bit of analysis on the election year as well, which is quite interesting. So look out for that video. Should be coming sort of next week. So I'll just discuss what's going on there in the US dollar and what I feel could potentially happen. But yeah, keep an eye out on the market moves. Thank you for everybody that joined me today. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Appreciate everybody sticking around. Royston, CG, Vincent, thank you for all your comments. Appreciate you. There won't be a live stream on Thursday. I'm actually going on holiday tomorrow. So I won't be around until next week. I'll have some videos lined up though, so make sure you stick around on the YouTube channel, and have a great trading week. And I hope it all goes well. And, keep an eye on your NFP data coming up this week. It's going to be a big one again. And yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you. See you soon.